Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are tearing down one of the absolute most fascinating paradoxes in modern music history. We're going to deconstruct exactly how a biracial, Jewish, Canadian child actor became the defining rapper of his generation. For years, critics were out there saying he had literally all the wrong traits to make it in hip-hop. But, as Jan Morrow's unauthorized biography, The Boy from Toronto, lays out so perfectly, Drake didn't succeed despite those perceived disadvantages. Actually, it's the exact opposite. He succeeded by weaponizing every single one of them. So, let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The wrong person. 2. The outsider's blueprint. 3. Building the empire. 4. The ultimate stress test. And finally, number 5, the limits of scale.
All right, kicking things off with section 1, the wrong person. To really get this, we have to frame Drake's early career not just as some standard artistic journey, but as a massive business problem that urgently needed solving.
Traditionally, hip-hop's center of gravity was strictly in places like New York or Atlanta, right? The industry heavily prioritized street credibility, hardness, and this almost impenetrable aura of invulnerability. But then you look at Aubrey Drake Graham. The guy was from Toronto, a city that essentially had zero rap pipeline at the time. He absolutely wasn't a street figure. I mean, he was Jimmy Brooks, a teen soap actor on Degrassi, who spent his most formative on-screen years earnestly navigating high school drama in a wheelchair. His natural instinct was just pure emotional vulnerability. He had no established path, the completely wrong background, and was in the wrong city. Sure, being on TV gave him visibility, but it gave him absolute zero credibility in the exact rooms he so desperately wanted to enter.
Which brings us to section 2, the outsider's blueprint. How do you solve a credibility problem that huge? Let's take a look.
Well, instead of hiding his outsider status, he weaponized it into a genuinely brilliant branding strategy built on 4 key pillars. First up, vulnerability is content. Rather than faking this tough guy persona, he leaned hard into sadness and longing. This opened up a massive underserved market, especially for women and introverts who frankly felt left out of traditional rap. Second, melody. By refusing to choose between singing and rapping, he essentially built a bridge between 2 huge genres, claiming a market larger than both of them combined. Third, treating place as a brand. He didn't pack up and move to New York. He stayed, rebranded Toronto as the Six, and turned it into his own proprietary moat. In business terms, that is a flawless, unique selling proposition. And fourth, the internet as distribution. Since he didn't have local gatekeepers to help him out, he bypassed them entirely. He mastered the early internet to turn mixtapes and streaming into his own personal distribution pipelines.
You can literally watch this strategy evolve in real time. Back in 2006, his mixtape Room for Improvement was all about public iteration. He was essentially beta testing his sound and letting those early fans emotionally invest in his growth. By 2009, with So Far Gone, he achieved the ultimate crossover by securing that crucial insider cosign from Lil Wayne. That validation? It was like a golden ticket right past the traditional gatekeepers. And finally, with his 2011 album Take Care, working alongside his producer Noah 40 Shybib, the moat was fully established. They created this incredibly distinct, nocturnal, emotional Toronto aesthetic that went on to win a Grammy and permanently reset the genre's emotional baseline. He didn't adapt to the industry, he literally forced the industry to adapt to him.
Moving on to part 3, building the empire. Now, Drake knew very well that cultural heat is highly perishable, so he had to figure out how to scale this musical breakthrough into a lasting monopoly. By the mid-2010s, he understood the brutal reality of the attention economy, so he started diversifying aggressively. He expanded into the OVO sound label, fashion lines like OVO Clothing and his Nike partnership Nocta. He launched Virginia Black Spirits and even stepped up as the global ambassador for the Toronto Raptors. He was taking this fleeting, volatile cultural attention and converting it into durable, anti-fragile ownership. Think about it. If a single song flopped or an album didn't quite hit, the empire as a whole wouldn't crumble because the foundation was spread out across completely different industries. Furthermore, he leaned into internet virality in a way that older, legacy stars were completely terrified to touch. Just think of the Hotline Bling video. While traditional icons fiercely guarded this untouchable, mysterious aura, Drake looked at his own awkward, goofy dancing and treated it as a highly profitable asset. He basically handed the internet his image and said, hey, go ahead, remix it, make fun of it. By becoming willingly and gleefully memeable, he unlocked free, self-replicating distribution that made his brand completely inescapable. It really proves that in the modern attention economy, constant presence beats dignified silence every single time.
But, as we'll see in section 4, the ultimate stress test, absolutely every blueprint has its limits. In the mid-2020s, this massive operating system faced a structural crisis it simply wasn't designed to handle.
And this crisis hit with incredible velocity. It all kicked off in March of 2024 with Kendrick Lamar's hyper-aggressive verse on Like That, basically declaring there was no big three in rap, only him. This sparked a totally brutal string of back-and-forth diss tracks. Then, jump to February 2025, and Kendrick is performing a literal victory lap at the Super Bowl, which was quickly followed by Drake filing a completely unprecedented lawsuit against Universal Music Group. And the whole thing finally culminated in Drake's massive, overwhelming musical response in May 2026.
To really grasp the damage of this cultural clash, we have to neutrally weigh their competing arsenals. Drake's entire power structure relied on commercial dominance and cross-genre pop hits. Kendrick's power, on the other hand, was built entirely on critical reverence and authentic insider credibility. So when Kendrick dropped his decisive track, Not Like Us, he essentially weaponized pop accessibility right back at Drake. He created this massive, incredibly danceable pop smash that simultaneously attacked the very foundation of Drake's authenticity. He neutralized Drake's home field advantage by beating him at his own absolute best game, the undeniable pop hit.
Following that cultural shockwave, we saw something truly wild: the UMG lawsuit. Drake actually sued his own corporate parent, alleging that the massive success of Kendrick's track was being artificially inflated by the label's corporate machinery. Now, regardless of the legal outcome, and just for the record, the initial defamation suit was actually dismissed by a judge. But this move totally exposed the hidden architecture of the music industry. It revealed this crazy irony. Drake had spent years building an incredible independent kingdom of clothing lines and spirits and sports partnerships, but at the end of the day, he was still just renting the corporate distribution pipes that his music flowed through.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the limits of scale. What exactly happens to endless volume when the cultural and legal verdicts just aren't going your way? Let's look at Drake's response in May of 2026.
The answer he came up with was 43. In a single day, Drake dropped 43 songs across 3 simultaneous albums: Iceman, Habibti, and Maid of Honor. Rather than retreating or, gracefully conceding the narrative, he used overwhelming volume as a brute force assertion of relevance. He was trying to basically drown out the cultural obituary in sheer, unignorable abundance.
Because for him, it all boils down to this one core philosophy: silence is concession, and output is argument. His deepest operating principle is that you never ever surrender the narrative to your critics. Instead, you just flood the zone with product. When the machine is questioned, you prove it's still running by operating it at a scale that literally no one else in the entire industry can match.
And that leaves us with the core dilemma of his late career. The outsider blueprint worked absolutely flawlessly to get him to the very top. But what happens when the underdog wins everything? When you're no longer the outsider looking in, but you are the establishment itself, is endless scale actually enough to maintain the crown? Thank you so much for joining The Explainer today. I really hope this deep dive gave you a powerful new framework for understanding the mechanics of modern fame. And I'll leave you pondering this final thought. Is the blueprint that builds an empire really the same one required to sustain it? Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next Explainer.